Okay, so let's talk about the Yamamoto et al. Study on chimpanzees' ability to help each other with flexible targeted helping. Let me give you the full title rather than me just muddle through it. The title is Chimpanzees' Flexible Targeted Helping Based on an Understanding of Conspecific's Goal. Um, One thing to keep in mind when you go to university and grad school, make sure your titles are really long and comprehensive. All right, this is quite a mouthful, but it does tell us specifically what we're looking for here. Not just helping, but flexible targeted helping, and that's going to be based on the use of tools. The helping is flexible because the chimpanzee must offer help based upon a changeable situation. Now, I know when I came into this study, I had never used the word conspecific aloud, and it's a word that's not used every day. A conspecific simply means a member of the same animal species that you belong to. So if you want to have some fun with your fellow human, refer to him or her as my conspecific. All right, let's go to the background of the study. Why are we doing this? There have been studies in the past that have looked at altruism, and that's a key word used in this study. Altruism is another way of saying helping behavior that gives you no immediate benefit to yourself. So the intro states that humans extensively help each other altruistically. And for many years, it was believed that this is a idiosyncrasy of human beings. This was special to humans. But as we study animal behavior more and more, we realize that maybe this is not necessarily true. So several previous studies have been cited in the first paragraph that look at other type of primates. So for example, let's see here. The first image is of I believe it's the cotton-top tamarin. Second image is of capuchin monkeys, and the last one is marmosets. So these are among several species of ape or monkey that have been investigated to demonstrate some sort of altruistic behavior, sharing food or giving help and stuff like that. Another way of labeling altruistic behavior is prosocial behavior. And when we say prosocial, we really just mean it's a voluntary behavior that benefits another person or society as a whole, or another being in the case of animals, or the animal society as a whole. A specific piece of research mentioned by name in the study is the Savage Roomba study. Some of the Cambridge teachers have been teaching long enough to remember it when this was on the syllabus. I believe it was 2 syllabi ago. And essentially, it deals with helping behavior, but with one key difference to the study we're about to look at. It looked at donating tools based on the requests made by symbols. So it's a arbitrary arbitrary system of communicating by conditioning them to understand what symbols mean. So there were two things that are key difference: the symbols, and also that there was some sort of shaping or conditioning involved in training the monkeys how to use these symbols. So these are two things we're trying to get rid of in the Yamamoto study. We don't want symbolic representations for what tool needs to be donated, and we don't want to have any sort of conditioning. And on that point, let's go a little further and see that it says, although the chimpanzees were all trained in solving the two tool use tasks presented to them, the experimenter never performed any other type of training or shaping of behavior in the participants. And again, in other words, we're not using shaping or conditioning to train the monkeys. So it's not based on some sort of positive reinforcement or reward system. Though that could be argued, though, because we will see that the monkey who's in the other cage does get the reward of juice, but there's no reward for the monkey who's actually helping. There's no extrinsic reward for helping. As you read the study, or as you revise for the study, keep in mind two other studies that are in the syllabus, and perhaps you've done these already. The Pvalue et al. Study on subway Samaritans, helping people who seem to be in need of help, whether they're drunk or ill, in a subway car, or the Baron-Cohen study, which looks at theory of mind. Both of these terms, altruism that are used in the Pvalue study and theory of mind, which is used in the Baron-Cohen study, will come up again in the primary source material. For those who don't remember, theory of mind is sort of similar to empathy, and it's just simply the ability to um, attribute mental states to yourself or to other people. So, in other words, to um, try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, perhaps, or to have the ability to recognize that people might be suffering or having some sort of emotional state. Okay, the best part of the study is the participants because they are each individually named. There's no confidentiality, so we actually, for one of the first times in a while, we actually have participants with names. They come in pairs, and there's an easy way to remember this, CAP or CAP, mother and child, mother and child, mother and child. So for C, you have Chloe and Cleo. For A, you have I and Ayumu. And for P, you have Pan and Paul. So like the experimenters that are running the study, these names represent both Eastern and Western culture or Eastern and Western naming. Now, what makes this study a little strange is that we have 6 chimpanzees, but only 5 of them are considered to be participants, and that's because Chloe was not actually in the booth where she would be assisting somebody with a tool. Therefore, there was no data for Chloe. She's always on the other end of the help, where she is the one getting the tool rather than giving the tool. There is no explanation in the primary source for why Chloe was not used. And actually, one of my criticisms of this study is that actually it's a little too short. It's only 4.5 pages long. So if you want to look at the study itself, it's available online. I would say it's something relatively quick to get through, but maybe there's not enough detail. Okay, so these are the participants, Chloe, I, Ayumu, Pan, and Paul. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity sample. That's easy because you're not really going to have a self-selecting sample or a volunteer sample for animals. That's usually going to be the case. They're not going to raise their hand and say, choose me, please. And this takes place in Japan at the Primate Research Institute in Kyoto, the Kyoto University. Or at least that's where the primates came from, I believe. If I'm mistaken, please let me know. All right, Apparatus is huge, literally and figuratively, in that it's a booth, and you have the dimensions for the length, width, and height given in centimeters. And students have asked before, do I need to memorize the length, width, and height? And of course, I'm not a big fan of that type of memorization. However, one thing you could remember is the approximately 1 meter from the floor is the slot where the monkey could reach for the tool or ask for assistance. So that's an easy number to remember if you're ever asked for some details about the booths. In one booth is the monkey giving the tools, and in the other booth is the monkey receiving the tools. Strangely enough, we got some details on the 3 cameras that were used set at different angles. It was a Panasonic NVGS150, I believe. I can't really read that. It's kind of small. Regardless, if you want to know that detail, that's fine. We'll watch some footage later of the actual experiment, and you'll see that there is some tearing of quality in the image, so maybe not the best camera. But then again, this was 2012, which seems like a short time ago, but in terms of technology, not terribly recently. All right, so you see there, there's a transparent panel between the 2 booths, so you could see that the monkeys could see each other very easily. They could understand each other's needs. However, that's only for the first set of trials. In the second set of trials, we're going to replace the transparent glass with opaque glass that's cloudy and you can't quite see what's happening in the other room. And then for some of the monkeys, we're going to try it again with the transparent glass. So there are 3 sets of trials. Can see, cannot see, can see. And we'll talk more about that later. Let's keep with the equipment and the apparatus. We also have a tray filled with 7 items. And this is called a tool set. Several or most of the tools are not relevant to the situation. And the situation is one chimpanzee wants to drink some juice. He either needs a stick or a straw to complete this task. So the procedure could be summed up with these three planes of glass. The IV would be, would be whether the chimpanzee can see into the other booth, while the DV would be the percentage of what item was offered when it was needed. So the percentage of the first offering of a tool. So for example, if a monkey grabs a straw, but he should be grabbing a stick, we're going to count the straw as the first offering, even if he grabs the stick eventually. All right, and there is the actual image that was used in the primary source. Unusual to have a color image in a primary source, but it is in color. I had a hard time with this image the first time I saw it because it was not clear to me that the juice was behind the wall. So I just kind of put a red circle in there and indicated that the juice in this situation is behind the wall and it cannot be reached with just your hand, even though it looks like he could reach in there. He needs the stick to reach the juice. And it looks like the juice is in an open container, but I don't think it was in an open container like this because it'll probably spill. So we'll look at the juice box, or what might be the juice box, in just a moment. All right, so we go from can seeing what's happening to not seeing what's happening, and then we repeat the can see situation. And the reason why this was done was to make sure that the situation was not affected by some sort of order effects. And in this case, the order effect we're talking about is the practice effect. So we want to make sure that the data is not skewed by the fact that the chimpanzees are becoming more familiar with the tasks. They're learning something through practice. So we want to make sure that the second can see condition is not drastically different from the first see condition. And because this is being used as sort of a control for experimental order effects, we don't need to use all the monkeys to check this. We could only use we only use 3, or at least Yamamoto and his colleagues only used 3 of the chimpanzees in the second can see condition. To make the dilemma clearer, I'll just go to this next slide. Really simplified, there are one of two problems. The juice box is out of reach. In that case, you need a stick to reach it. Or the juice box has no straw, in which case the straw is the appropriate tool. Doesn't seem terribly complicated. They just throw in 5 other tools into the toolbox just to keep it more targeted, the type of help that is being received. Okay, so of course they could offer the hose, the rope, the chain, or whatever else is in that box. Okay, this next slide here gives you a general sense of the order of operations for the whole procedure. It also gives you some of the numbers that were used to standardize the procedure in terms of the number of trials per IV condition. But in the red box, you could see what happened before the IV conditions were introduced formally. So before the study proper began, they wanted to make sure that the chimps were familiar with the objects in the toolbox, and they would expose them for 5 minutes at a time over an 8-day period. Now you can see here for the can see, cannot see, and the last can see condition, I put this little shuffle symbol to indicate that the trials were randomized. So you wouldn't do 24 stick and then 24 straw, because then there'll be some sort of order effect there. There'll be an expectancy for what the chimp should provide each time. And so if you're ever asked to describe a control or explain a control in the study, you could say the stick condition, or the stick being needed versus the straw being needed, were randomized to ensure there were no sort of order effects. Okay, let's watch a short video that is gives you a general sense, or a better sense actually, of the procedure, what kind of things would happen inside these 2 booths. Okay, so for this condition, the first offer was the straw, and you could see the chimpanzee who wants to drink seems like sort of desperate, and he's reaching his arms through the slot. And this is considered to be an official request. Okay, this is called a request in the study. Okay, moving on. Let's get to the results. Now, this next graphic I'm going to show you is directly from the primary source, copied and pasted, but I did make some changes just to make it a bit easier on the eyes to read. I know when I first came across this study, I found this bar chart to be a little difficult to muddle through. Okay, remember this is a bar chart, not a histogram, because we're categorizing the bars. Okay, note at the bottom it says it's an ABA design. Condition A, the condition B, then back to condition A. I suppose you could counterbalance this in a different way. A student asked me, why wasn't it AB, AB? Suppose if you want better control for order effects, you could do that as well. But to the graph itself, or the chart itself, just remember that the thing that was needed was given more often in the can see condition. So the blue is the stick, the yellow is the straw. If they gave something like the brush, which Pal loved to do for some reason, it would be gray. And if they gave nothing, if they were just being completely indifferent, it's black. So this should not surprise us. What was needed when seen was given. However, if you cannot see, it was sort of like a 50-50 guess, all right? It was like a coin flip. So you see the yellow and the blue in the middle, cannot see condition, are more evenly distributed, I guess. And in the end, there might be a little practice effect because as you could see, the blue is bigger for the stick and the yellow is bigger for the straw, but it's not drastically different than in the first trials. And again, with the last group of data, you only had 3 of the 5 chimpanzees partaking in that last control, or to check for order effects. All right, there is some other numerical data that you could know, but I'm not going to sweat this too much. But just know that 90% of the time there was or 91% of the time, there was an offer of an object for the first condition, 96 for the cannot see condition, and 98 for the second can see condition. And as I said, offering of the correct tool for the dark or the opaque or the cannot see condition was sort of like a coin flip 50-50. All right, so 90.8% upon request. And what that means is if the other chimpanzee had put his arm through the slot to indicate that he wants something. All right, I alluded to Paul and Pan earlier, that Paul was sort of special in that he loved to grab the brush first. And remember, whatever you grab first is the thing that was recorded as the tool that was chosen, the first offer. But they actually say because he was so attracted to the brush, that if they removed that first offer and go for the second offer, then we see that PAL 2 is capable of targeted helping if you ignore the first thing that he picked up. So, and this is well above statistical chance using a Pearson coefficient or p-values or anything that sort of tests whether things that are results are due to chance or due to some sort of effect of the IV on the DV. All right, so we established that Pal is special. The mother is also special in that she chose 100% the correct choice in the second can-see condition. So she was quite gifted at giving the right tool. Ayumu is also special. Ayumu is the only chimpanzee who actually looked through the slot to see what the other chimpanzee may have needed. So obviously Ayumu is going to perform better in the cannot see condition because he can see. And here's an actual image of Ayumu peeking through the opening during the opaque glass condition. All right, some extra gravy. P-value ratings for the first ratio of stick to straw tool offers And because we said that Ayumu was peeking through the glass, we could see that those numbers are different than his conspecifics. So in other words, the probability of it being chance for the cancy condition for these chimpanzees is very low, while you could see it hovers around 50% for the other chimpanzees besides Ayumu, because Ayumu was, I don't want to say he was cheating, but he was just being more clever than the other chimpanzees. Okay, these are p-values that set how probable it is that we have just chancy results. Okay, let us move on to some conclusions. Conclusion 1 is that chimpanzees are capable of offering flexible, targeted help based on understanding the needs of other chimpanzees or conspecifics. All right, this is nothing terribly new. We knew that primates could be altruistic, but what makes this a little different perhaps is that they're able to adjust accordingly to the situation, all right, using a two-tool setup. All right, 2, when chimpanzees can visually appreciate their partner's situation, they will offer help or offer the right tool. And this addresses what was talked about in the introduction of the study. They wanted to find out how altruistic behavior is performed, not so much why it was performed. So it is performed based on visual appreciation of somebody else's situation, and that's where the empathy perhaps comes in. Correct me if I'm wrong, as somebody who's read the study perhaps more closely than I, but it seems to me that mothers and children were working together, sometimes the mother assisting the child and sometimes the child assisting the mother. So to me, it seems like that this may not be purely altruistic behavior, because there might be some sort of maternal or family instinct involved in helping the other chimpanzee. If I'm wrong about this, please let me know. But it seems like you're not really testing pure altruism. To me, pure altruism would be like seeing a stranger on the street who's in trouble. But that's maybe a little bit off topic. I don't know. Keep in mind that most of the time chimps did not help unless there was a direct request. So there was a bit of urging involved. And I have another problem with this too. Could this be negative reinforcement? Like if you're making a lot of noise, you saw that in that image, there was a chimpanzee who was clapping, and maybe the other chimpanzee's like, you're really annoying me with your antics over here. If I give you this thing, maybe you'll shut up. So that's just me. I think there are some limitations to this study. It is my first time teaching it. So if I'm mistaken in any of these things, please let me know, and maybe together we could figure out if that's a valid evaluation. But as far as the formal evaluation that we usually do, let's start with generalizability. 6 chimpanzees were used in the study. However, only 5 of them were actually in the tool offering booth. So that is really what's being measured, not so much the person who's getting the juice, or not the person, the chimpanzee who's getting the juice, but the chimpanzee who's offering the stick or the straw to the person who wants to drink the juice. I keep using the word person, I mean chimpanzee. Sorry about that. Anyway, so 5 chimpanzees is not a lot. It may be generalizable to other primates, including human children, but we don't want to keep the numbers too high because we always have to think about the ethics of the study, which we'll come to later. Reliability, we saw, there were 3 cameras used that could make sure that there was some sort of good inter-rater reliability perhaps, or that we're seeing everything from multiple angles. We had the second can-see condition to check for order effects. We had the randomization of the stick and straw, and we had the standard procedures and things like that. Application is the one I really like to gloss over because I am not sure how this has application outside of psychological research. I don't think it's going to have a great implication on your daily life, unlike perhaps something like the Canley study on amygdala activation, where that changes the way people advertise to us on television. So I think the application is rather low. Some of the textbooks don't even mention it. If I'm going to pull at try to find something to talk about, maybe I'll say It could help us understand human children's altruism, or it could help us promote nonverbal helping behavior amongst people. I don't know. If you have a better one, please put it in the comments below. Validity, these are monkeys raised in captivity in a highly artificial environment. Them being raised in captivity and being used for other studies, by the way, does affect the generalizability as well. But the situation is highly unusual. These tools are man-made. They're not things you find in the wild. As far as other types of validity, repeated measures is used, so there's going to be less participant variables, which helps with the validity. So it's somewhere probably in the middle. Ethics are quite high. You could say there was deprivation because the chimpanzee couldn't drink without some assistance, but really that's not what we mean by deprivation. Deprivation means starving the animal. So don't worry about that. There were low numbers used. They were housed at the institute that were professional in their handling of the chimpanzees. They had very high standards, and they were used to participating in other studies. Therefore, the stress level was probably not that high. All right, if you're taking a monkey from the wild, they're probably going to have a highly stressing situation. But here, I don't think you should worry about it too much. Okay, guys, that's the end of my Yamamoto presentation. If there are any sort of omissions or mistakes, again, this is my first time dealing with this study, please feel free to comment below. I will not be offended. Have a good day.